Our newly appointed Senior Director of Stellenbosch Business School, Professor Chris van der Hoven, joins us for a discussion on the function of business schools in entrepreneurship, employment, development and societal effect. A very good evening to you. Welcome. I mean, businesses are essential. We keep hearing that more and more entrepreneurs are needed to stimulate the country's economy. But what role do business schools play?
Good evening, Mpho. I guess it's a whole spectrum of different things. I mean, one obvious thing is to create new value that didn't exist before, or to grow in areas of value that warrant attention, and through refinement and so on can be expanded. And all of that is adding value through the possibility of better jobs and more jobs. And also, I would argue, in the right circumstances, getting the foreign investment coming into the country and local investment to lubricate the economy so that we can grow in excess of our population growth. So I think that's a large part of it, really very important part of the economy.
Yeah. Looking at the spin-offs, which positive effects of business school programs are we seeing as evidence as we look at the scope of entrepreneurs in South Africa?
Well, I think all of the schools, look, the government has been very clear, and corporate South Africa has been very clear about the importance of entrepreneurship and of small businesses that potentially can grow. And I think business schools can give a steer as to which sectors are potentially optimal in terms of the base that we have in the country of existing resource, the levels of education, and so on. And also to, very importantly, provide the leadership that is needed to be able to judge which risks are worth taking and which risks can be beneficiated so that ultimately the economy will be affected. We know that we've got structurally high unemployment. I'm not an economist, so I must be careful to stay in my lane a little bit, but we have high levels of unemployment, and clearly that's a base load of value that potentially entrepreneurship can provide. As far as Stellenbosch is concerned, our Small Business Academy is already having an impact, and what they are doing is identifying people who've got opportunities that they could beneficiate if they can just be supported in the right way. And that might be finance, that might be skills. There's a range of things that can be done.
And of course, that's a very, very important area which you touch on. It's all very well to have a genius idea, but not have the mechanisms, the finance to really bring this business to reality. And when it comes to that and access to these funds, a lot of the conversation is around red tape, that you've got a brilliant idea, but accessing that money is a complete mission. What kind of interventions are needed to ensure that entrepreneurs who do show and have the muscle and the kind of business that can benefit the economy but lack the access to finance because of the red tape, what conversations are needed in that space?
Yeah, so just can I just go back a second?
Yeah.
You made the point about the brilliant idea. I'm not even sure that it's a question of having a brilliant idea in the first instance. I think having the energy and being directed and supported in a way that can channel that energy appropriately means that if you can provide better service for your customers than the person left or right of you, or if you're providing service into an environment, which is often the case in South Africa and onto the continent where there isn't that service already, then it's not about a genius idea, it's about the motivation. So I think that's part of the story. The second thing is that the support is not just about finance, although for people who are already in jobs, I imagine that they think like that what they want is they want finance so that they can pivot, and that's true. But for lots of people, traders and hawkers and people who literally are trying to live from day to day. I'm not sure that they see the red tape and those kind of issues, but what they don't have is the platforms to grow. I mean, I'm sure you've heard of all of the work that Gigi Alcock has done, and he talks about Casinomics, and I'm very enthused by the idea that actually the township economies are absolutely booming, but they're doing so despite the red tape that happens elsewhere in the economy.
I'll ask you that question.
But having said that,
yeah, just pardon that interruption. I'll ask you that question because, yes, well and good, you talk about those vendors who are stimulating the township economy, but there are entrepreneurs who want to scale their businesses and end up in mass retail outlets. Those entrepreneurs need the funding. Those entrepreneurs encounter the red tape, and those are the entrepreneurs who are going to create jobs, tens, hundreds, thousands. Those are the entrepreneurs I'm referring to as I ask you that question 100%. Around the red tape.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look, I mean, in our environment, we have two things that come to mind straight away. The first is we have a program called Young Minds, which is intended to help bridge the gap between school leaving and getting into the economy. And Young Minds is a program that's hosted at Stellenbosch, and it is intended to help youngsters to look at their careers through the lens of, should I be going to university? Should I be looking at something which is a more practical application, or should I be starting a business? And if so, how do I go about doing that? So that's starting much younger. And then inside of the business school, also we have, as I said earlier, the Small Enterprise Academy, and the idea there is that people would work shoulder to shoulder with us, so that we can give them a steer and expose them to other entrepreneurs, expose them to people who've got the experience of going through what they've been through. And I think there's a golden opportunity. And by the way, a very willing ecosystem of people in the environment that we operate in who are entrepreneurs themselves at very different levels of operation, who can support people in a slightly different way than just the finance part.
What about the importance of mentorship? I mean, yes, finance is important, but you can have all the money in the world and still fail.
Yeah, I mean, I think, if you're a young person, well, if you're anybody for that matter, if you are about to start a business, the biggest thing is confidence. And a balance of risk, an understanding of what is risky and what's too risky. And so you're right. I think having decent mentors around you is a really invaluable resource. And we're very lucky at Stellenbosch. We are surrounded in the area, and it's true across the country, but it's very true where we are. Where we've got lots of people who are very capable and very willing to be mentors in the way that you describe,
And what would you say to observers who may have a level of criticism against business schools, talking about perhaps, we using case studies that are not relevant, or perhaps, the lack of relevance, and some may speak about the negative impact on the individuals in these courses and how useful this information will be in theory when it comes to actually running the business?
Yeah, no, look, I think that's a fair challenge, and it's an ongoing consideration for any decent school, is to constantly, the whole notion of academic assurance is absolutely critical. I have tried to drive a narrative around employability, and by employability I mean an ability to add value, whether it's in your own business or in somebody else's business. And employability means that people have relevant skills, they've accessed relevant research, and to your point, they've done case studies that are contextually relevant. And I'm delighted to say that in our case, it's true to say that we develop the case studies that are contextually relevant. So will help you understand the market that you're most likely to be working in. But we also have a balance, and we have to do this. We have to have a balance between case studies that are locally relevant and case studies that are more globally relevant, because, you know, it's absolutely universally true that the principles that are applied elsewhere in some instances apply here and vice versa.
As many business schools, you know, create and expand these entrepreneurship programs and courses for graduate students, there's a conversation on whether or not entrepreneurship can actually be taught in business school. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I think, I mean, especially for people who are coming out of corporate, sometimes you need something to shake the foundation so that you can change course, you know. You can pivot into an alternative, and sometimes it's about a network, sometimes it's about specific skills. I think, there's lots of entrepreneurs out there who have succeeded, and they are rightly proud of what they've done, and they've done so without any access to a university or a business school. That's absolutely true. But there's also a lot of people who have come into business schools in one shape and gone out, you know, in another shape, a kind of shape-shifting thought, you know, intellectual shapeshifter, and have been very successful as a result. And I would also say that growth is not just about entrepreneurship, is not just about growth from startup to 10 million rands worth of turnover. You know, we also need to look at business growth, which is the next level onwards. So companies that have grown to a certain stage and then plateaued, where they're coming into the business school and being exposed to other people that are in the same environment, you know, people on their cohort who've had experience of that, can then grow that company to the next level. That's also adding to jobs and benefiting the economy.
Yeah, with those businesses that have plateaued, what kind of societal effect can they have if we look at those kind of businesses and the impact they have on their communities?
Well, it's huge, because if you look at a really scary recent case in the negative, you can think of things like ArcelorMittal and the effect that it's had on Newcastle. You know, ArcelorMittal decides to withdraw. Potentially Newcastle as a town could decline quite dramatically. So the answer to your question is that the opposite of that is also true. You know, if we can build businesses, there's a huge ecosystem that sits around the kind of metals that ArcelorMittal were producing, from relatively unsophisticated products to sheet metal for motor car manufacturing. And if they exit the country, then you have a situation where car manufacturers are now looking at where can they get those same raw materials for their manufacturing from, you know. So there's a spin-off and a multiplier effect which really must be taken into account.